Greetings and welcome. I'm Scott Harris. I'm your host for Volleyball in Perspective. This is where we sit down with enshrinees for the 2007 class of the Volleyball Hall of Fame and just kind of talk about their background and get a little education as to what it was that brought them to this pinnacle in their career. I am with Bob Ctvrtlik, and I want to trust I got that right. Say your name to me. Let me see how I did.
Ctvrtlik.
Ctvrtlik.
That was very good.
It was pretty close. Now, in Bob's case, unlike some of the enshrinees that I've spoken to, I have had the opportunity to watch him play professionally, at least on the outdoor level, because he, I would think, are you still a member tied to the AVP, or is that just where you kind of last played when you were doing the 2-on-2 thing outside?
I'm flattered, but I am retired now for 7 or 8 years, but I used to play when we had time off from the national team or the Olympic team. I'd play a little bit on the beach.
Certainly. So as I was adding to the fact that I have watched this man play, so I kind of have this added perspective as I sit here and chat with him this afternoon. So let's talk about it. You're a member of the Volleyball Hall of Fame. Would you have ever thought, for where the sport has kind of evolved in the last couple of decades, that this would be the pinnacle that eventually would come your way?
It definitely wasn't anything I aspired to. Going back in my history, even starting out with volleyball, when I was playing at Pepperdine University and we had won a national championship, I was surprised to get a letter to be asked to play on the Olympic team, or to at least try out for the Olympic team. So then taking it from there and then thinking I eventually would play for 14 years with the U.S. team and then be fortunate enough to have played with great players and then have the opportunity to be elected to the Hall of Fame, it's a treat.
Now, interesting that you just shared, you were approached to try out for the Olympic team. Was there something that you felt about your talents on the college level that made you maybe not think that you could go to them and say, hey, I'd like to try out for your team?
Well, the process is they send a letter to the top prospects from the collegiate ranks.
Certainly.
And I just didn't have the experience. I was a tennis player, a basketball player, and they didn't have men's volleyball in my high school. So I had picked up the sport very late and had played at a junior college and had transferred from a college in Long Beach City College, to Cal State Long Beach, and then had only played at Pepperdine after redshirting, so I only played 1 season. So it was a surprise that we won the national championship and I was chosen the player of the year, but it still was a surprise. I was going on to a team where people had been playing for 15, 20 years, and I was really in my 3rd year of volleyball.
So now, if you don't mind, without your stat sheet, but share with me some of the things that the Olympic Committee recruiters saw that made them come to you. What was significant in that championship year with Pepperdine that had them call you up?
Well, we were 25-0, and I think that's always a good start in that we were the top team in the nation. And I had taken a year off because I had transferred in from Cal State Long Beach, and in that year I put on somewhere between 15 and 20 pounds, and I worked out very hard, and I was for the collegiate level, I was a pretty physical player, and at the international level, the U.S. team was using a 2-man serve receive, and it takes a certain skill set to do that, and it's very particular players that can focus for a long period of time, but that also are physically suited to play that type of game. And it worked out that my coach was Marv Dunphy, who later subsequently was asked to be the Olympic coach for 1988, my first Olympics. And so it was a natural transition. He was almost grooming me for the position that I would eventually play with the Olympic team.
Now, as a player, what was your specialty?
Once again, we had a 2-man serve receive. So I would play opposite of Karch Karai, who arguably is not just the best player to ever be in the United States, but the best player in the world that ever has been and probably ever will be. So I was opposite of Karch, or next to him, for 6 years of my career. So every ball came to me. So it was very physically demanding, and so my specialty was serve receive, and then also playing defense, taking the hardest hits that a Cuban or the Russians could deliver, and they would always funnel them. We'd set up the whole configuration so that the balls would come to primarily Karch or myself, and we had a pretty good ability to get those back into play.
Now, it's interesting when you describe it like that, because I don't think a lot of folks really understand from what you see on TV what it's like to have to position yourself to get a dig on what could be a 100-mile-an-hour kill attempt. What is some of the pressure that you really have to go through to stay focused on being where you have to be?
Well, first you have to be in a good physical condition. Generally, after an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, people start to fade. So it's your physical conditioning. But when you get to the top level, everyone is an excellent athlete. And everyone has their 30 to 40-inch jumps and great reactions. But what people don't always know, a lot of your preparation occurs off the court. We're watching a tremendous amount of film. I could still, even having not played on the U.S. team since 1997 and almost 10 years ago, I could still recite the tendencies of every player in the world, what they would do in each situation.
Homework and preparation.
So it is your preparation, and that makes people think you're a heck of a lot quicker than you are. For example, I would know one outside hitter from Russia would tend at the end of matches to like to hit a sharp cross-court ball, and then we would configure our defense. So I would just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And so many little things like that people don't even know are going on. But for me, it was a great part and one of the major attractions to the game.
Now, you talk about what it was like being kind of a late bloomer on the volleyball scene. And you have achieved greatness. I have seen you play. You are an excellent volleyball player. Do you think that your talents could have soared higher if you had had to start it sooner?
You never know. One of the things that enabled me to be pretty good at the end of my career was the fact that I love to play. And I did see many players who started 10 years earlier than I did. They were slugging into the gym each morning. And I loved to play the first day I went out there, and I loved to play the last day when I retired. And so I don't know if I could have been that much better. Physically, I wasn't a huge jumper, and I wasn't as gifted as some of the players. So I think I pretty much got everything I could out of what gifts I've got.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you were able to describe that you actually came into it at an age and within a window where your passion was there the day you stepped in. Mm-hmm. It was probably hard for you to step away because that passion had not died, and I'm sure you still carry that passion to this day.
Well, I love to play, and when I stopped, it was time to stop. I did have some physical ailments that I wanted to leave and still be able to play with my kids when they're young. I have 3 boys, and I want to be able to do things physically with them.
Certainly.
And many players who I played with have trouble getting up and down a flight of stairs. And so I started having some foot problems and some knee issues. And it's hard to get out of bed when you're the 34-year-old on the team when the average age is 23. So I had a great career, and I was happy for it, but I think it was time.
So that's good. So you walked away where you were able to say, I don't have any regrets. I got what I wanted out of it. I've walked away. I'm still physically able to carry on. You're happy with the decisions in your career.
I am. And I met my wife through a blind date at a volleyball banquet. I have 3 boys. I live where I live because of volleyball. I now work with the International Olympic Committee. I'm vice president of the U.S. Olympic Committee, and it all started from volleyball. So volleyball was such a major part of my life. But if it's over, that's okay.
Are your sons going to follow in your footsteps? Not that maybe they won't have their own path, but are you kind of pointing them a little? Or because of what Dad did, it's almost inevitable?
Well, what I have thought with volleyball is that my boys have to at least be competent. There's nothing worse than someone who was in the Hall of Fame or some other honor, and that your siblings or your offspring, they can't play at all. So I have taught them the basic fundamentals. They both have made their little junior high team, so I'm excited about that. I have to admit there is a little something extra when they're out there playing volleyball as opposed to another sport. But the biggest challenge is really being a parent and thinking you have something to add and just sitting on your hands and having your wife hand you a lollipop so you don't say too much out there. But,
yes, you try to be encouraging and not too critical when you are a parent and a fan in the stands. I understand. Seeing that volleyball in its birthplace is here in this country, maybe you didn't have some of the obstacles that some other countries have. Although maybe I'm taking my statement in the wrong direction, because the fact is volleyball is embraced in some other countries better than it is here. So maybe I should ask, do you have opinions on how we can better grow the sport in the country where it was born?
I do. I having played for 5 years professionally in Italy, and also quite a bit in Brazil, where they have their professional leagues that have just blossomed. It is a regret that I haven't been involved with or been able to help more that promotion of volleyball within the United States. When we used to tour at the height of volleyball, I believe in the late 80s, early 90s, after we had come off our gold medal performances, the 84 team had won a gold medal and the 88 team had won a gold medal and then a bronze in 92. We could fill up almost any gym in the second and third tier markets. And we would even go, I remember some of our big matches against the Soviet Union at that time, not Russia, it was the Soviet Union. And we would have 13, 14, 15,000 fans in the seats. So I don't think it's the sport that was a problem. But I do think we've never come to the right combination of going to second tier markets, having a small, well-capitalized league that could be a feeder eventually for the Olympic team, and also help grow the popularity in the United States. Because it is just a shame our best players continue to go now to the various Soviet or the republics, also to Brazil, Japan, and Italy to play professionally.
Now, we talk a little bit as far as to the height of volleyball, late 80s, early 90s, along the time when, in fact, you were part of its heyday. So with a lot of the guys that were on your peer level, your colleagues being some of the greats, did you have a chance to idolize anyone? Because a lot of the people that we consider the greats of the sport in this country were right there on your level. Heck, they were you.
Maybe it was one of my advantages. I didn't ever go in awe of any of the players. They were my co-players. And I just remember the first time when I went, our training center was in Mission Beach in San Diego at this federal facility, and I walked in, and I did for the first time, the first day, I remember saying, these are all gold medalists. They had come off the 84 games. I had just started in 1985, and I looked around and did think for a while, do I really deserve to be here? And then it took me a full year before one player was injured. I was able to work myself in the starting lineup, and it was myself with 5 gold medalists. And I remember it was in Paris at the World Championships. And of course, if anything went wrong, you know who they were looking at. But, but it was a particular challenge being in that situation, because I did have the Karch Karais, the Dusty Dvoraks, the Craig Bucks, the Pat Powers, the Steve Timmons, people who just, when you talk about volleyball, those are the names. And then there was Bob Ctvrtlik slipping in there. But I did learn from them. I don't think I ever idolized any of them. I learned, I competed with them, and then hopefully the next subsequent Olympic teams, I was able to take some of that experience that I had learned and pass it on to the next generation.
If I may, just because I'm hoping it'll help me learn a little more about you, but in athletics as you grew up, before volleyball became your niche, but is there an idol that you had in athletics, or maybe even in life, that just helped you as a person on the inside to make you that strong athlete?
Well, you know, I always wanted to be an athlete. I didn't know, it's kind of silly, but I always prayed that I could be tall enough and strong enough to be an athlete. And I remember a man from the Los Angeles Rams, this will really date us, but Jack Snow, he was a wide receiver, and I went to a little small Catholic school in Long Beach, California, and he came in when I was in 3rd grade and delivered the message that any athlete, any person, if you really want something bad enough, you can achieve your goals. And he wanted to be a wide receiver when he was a little boy, and that really resonated with me. And I was a basketball player, and then eventually I took up tennis, and I didn't even know I'd be playing volleyball at that time. But I did know that I just absolutely loved athletics. And just fate had it that one thing led to another, and I was able to pick up the sport even starting from playing on asphalt. I didn't have anything really too organized when I started, and I was just fortunate as I went along to have great coaches and great players to play with.
I may know the answer to my next question because I kind of saw the emotion in your eyes when you were talking about kids and family. So I think I would ask, what's next for Rob Ctvrtlik?
Well, I love challenges, and volleyball has always been a big part of my life, but now it's just one more stepping stone in the past. Now I am with the U.S. Olympic Committee, and I am a member of the International Olympic Committee, and I always wanted to either be with children and have the ability to directly influence them, or to be at the top of an organization where you could really have an influence over sport. And it seems that the path seems to be to go to the top of one of these organizations where the decisions you make influence hundreds, 200,000 athletes at a time. And so I love my family. I've got a great bunch of kids who I volunteer, my 3 boys, I volunteer on all their volleyball teams and their sports teams, so I want to stay close to them in that way. But I think somewhere in the leadership of sports administration, I'll be involved, and I do all that on a volunteer basis. I still have a professional life, but I do want to stay involved in sports and be able to help shape sports within this country, and also the way this country interacts internationally with other countries.
You are a Hall of Famer in a sport that has brought you great happiness, great success. It's your passion. You still have it. What does this enshrinement mean to you?
This means a lot more than I thought it would. I've received so many awards for various things through the last 20 years. Things from a all-time great award to a best player in the world. But this really is something nice. I've been receiving congratulations from literally places and friends all over the world. It's a nice cherry on top of the cake, and it means a lot. I was able to bring my wife Cosette here. My family all wanted to be here, but for one reason or another couldn't. And it just is a nice way to tie a bow on a career that really was a big part of my life.
Collegiate national champion, world gold medalist, I could even say king of the beach, and now 2007 Volleyball Hall of Fame enshrinee, Rob Ctvrtlik. Congratulations, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for chatting with us.